Hey ghoul friends, it's me, Adrian, or Ayden. Either way, I am still your host and you are still listening to Susto, the podcast of paranormal folklore from Latin American cultures. Welcome back. Thank you so much for returning from the dead. And if this is your first time, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us at the seance that is this podcast. Right off the bat, I want to give a quick disclaimer about how I might sound. I'm not sure. I'm feeling better today, but cedar season allergies has had me in a chokehold. It has been dragging me through the dirt. So hopefully I don't sound super stuffy today during this session because it's been really bad. But by some miracle today, I think the universe knew that I needed to get this recording done today. So I feel a bit better. I feel like I sound better than I did the last couple days. So either way, if I sound a little off, that may be why. Now, I know that people listen to podcasts, that people may listen to this podcast in specific for entertainment purposes, as a stress relief, as a distraction, what have you. That's certainly how I listen to some of my favorite podcasts. But there has been a lot happening lately in the news, in the world. And at the recording of the last episode, shit hadn't really hit the fan, to be honest. There's a lot happening right now with ICE and with this weird, what feels like a fascist takeover of the country right now. I think if you've listened to this show, if you know me, if you follow me online, you know exactly where I stand on this issue and where I've always stood on this issue. Around here, these parts, it should not come as a surprise that it has always been and will forever be fuck ICE. They should be abolished and, quite frankly, prosecuted, especially Jonathan Ross, who was caught on camera killing Renee Good. I think I said this on a video on TikTok as well, that this is not the first or the last of ICE's crimes, and this is why they need to be abolished, why it needs to be destroyed and done away with, and these people need to be brought to justice. I don't want to take too much of your time right now listening to this. I do want to empower you, though, with some resources, and I want to encourage you to keep focused, to keep going, to stay in the know, and to keep talking about this, because it can feel uncomfortable. It can be very frustrating, and it can make you feel angry. I have been angry every single day since Renee Good's murder. And that's not to say that that's when this issue started. That has just been when it's kind of been at the forefront of everything. It's everywhere I look. It's what I think about constantly. But a very, very good friend of mine reminded me that our anger is a reminder that our humanity is still intact. So it is fine to feel angry. We should feel angry. More people should be angry. However, like I said, I do want to empower you. I want us to stay empowered. There are resources in the episode description below. There are links to the immigrant rights red cards, which are cards that you can print and cut and pass out yourself. They explain what an immigrant's rights are when they encounter ICE or Border Patrol, or when they are confronted about their immigration status. There's a link to a Know Your Rights When Confronted by ICE flyer, and that goes for anybody. It's in English and Spanish, and it comes in different scenarios. There's a link to the ACLU protesters' rights so that you can know your rights if you are out in the streets protesting what is happening. There's also a link to donate to the National Immigrant Justice Center. There are so many organizations that are already doing the work. If you cannot get in the streets, if you do not feel comfortable speaking, but you have $1 or more, send it to them. And I would also encourage you, there's not a link for this, but I would encourage you to look into your local rapid response network to see if there are any, so that you can report and know about ICE activity in your area. Like I said, it's very important that we stay informed, that we keep talking to each other about this, that we keep the conversation going, because they are relying on us to get complacent and let it go, and that we know our rights. Although they are constantly being violated, it is important to know them so that we can document this, so that we can hold whoever needs to be held accountable. Okay, thank you. Like I said, I don't want to take up so much of that time because I can talk about this for hours, but I would encourage you to also follow me on social media. I am sharing updates as I can. I am sharing resources as I can. I'm sharing information as I can. I encourage you to do the same, because that is what it's going to take. We need to approach this from all fronts, whether it's on the streets, online, or with each other. Really quick, take a deep breath with me. In, out. Okay. Thank you for listening to that. Take care of each other. All right, we're going to move on. Before we get into the episode, I want to thank everybody, to those of you who shared your stories on the most recent Letters from the Beyond. Please visit sustopodcast.com or linktr.ee/susto and click the submit story button that is on those pages. You can send in your story. It can also be a photo, a video, or an EVP, an electric voice phenomenon. And remember, as always, you can support Susto by leaving a positive rating, a review, or a comment wherever you are listening, by following on social media. Again, that's at Susto Podcast on every platform, and by sharing the show with your own ghoul friends. With that being said, thank you once again for being here. We are going to get into today's story, which is about El Chaure. In Katia la Mar, the air always smelled like salt and fried plantains. That night, the windows were open to let in the breeze from the coast. From the kitchen came the soft crackle of oil, the hum of an old radio playing boleros, and the gentle clatter of plates as Abuela Carmen set dinner on the table. Arroz con pollo, tajadas, a little extra sauce, the way the children liked it. Her grandchildren sat cross-legged on the floor, full and happy, fingers still shiny with grease. Their parents had left hours earlier, dressed in their best clothes, laughing as they rushed out the door. Nos vemos mañana, mamá. Pórtense bien, their mother said. It was going to be a late wedding, and the children were excited to spend the night with their grandmother. The apartment building stood 4 stories tall, close enough to the water that on quiet nights you could hear the sea breathing. Ships passed in the distance, sometimes letting out a horn as they approached the port of La Guaira to the east. Carmen barely noticed them anymore. She was rinsing dishes when the older child, Luis, went quiet. Too quiet. Abuela, he said, his voice small. There's something outside. Carmen dried her hands and followed him to the window. At first, she saw only the tree across the street, its leaves moving gently in the night air. Then, she saw the eyes. Round, pale, fixed. An owl sat on a branch level with the children's bedroom window, its body still as stone. Its face was almost entirely white, the moonlight catching its feathers. It did not blink. It did not turn its head. It stared in. Luis took a step back. It's looking at us. His younger sister, Alejandra, grabbed Carmen's skirt. I don't like it. Carmen felt something tightening in her chest, an old, unwanted memory, but she smiled anyway. It's just an owl, she said softly. They hunt at night. But its eyes, Luis said. They look smart, like it knows something. The owl tilted its head just slightly. Carmen closed the curtain halfway. There's an old story, she said, more to herself than to them. From where I grew up, in Sucre, we called it El Chaure. The word sent her mind back to the feeling of being a child, terrified of a world where so many things could happen. They say when a Chaure appears, it's not just an animal, it's a warning. It comes before something big, something bad. The children stared at her, and she realized she was only scaring them, the same way her grandmother had scared her with these stories when she was a child. But that's just stories, she added quickly. And besides, we're far from Sucre. You don't see Chaures here, not this close to Caracas. She did not say the rest out loud, but this owl looked exactly like a Chaure. Her grandkids accepted the explanation and went back to playing. Carmen continued to look out the window when she noticed something odd. This owl did not blink. It did not move. It was just present, as if waiting for something. Her stomach turned in a knot. Eso no es normal, she whispered to herself. In Sucre, the Chaures stayed near mangroves and old cemeteries. They did not come to apartment buildings. They did not come this close to Caracas, and they never stared inside. After playing for hours and eating delicious food with their grandmother, the children tired themselves out and went to bed. Carmen lay on the couch, rosary in hand, listening to the night as she started dozing off to sleep. Then, wings slammed against the outside wall and scared Carmen awake. The owl hooted. Luis cried out. Carmen sat up and went to the bedroom and comforted Luis. The owl probably just saw a mouse. There's many of them in the city. She held onto Luis and rocked him back to sleep. From the bed, she could see outside the bedroom window and to the tree that stood out front of the apartment building. The owl was still there, watching. When the children's breathing slowed, it flapped again, louder this time, beating the air as if angry at their sleep. "No," Carmen whispered. "Déjalos." The owl did not move. Each time the children drifted toward sleep, the owl would wake them up, either with a flap of its wings or another of its unnerving hoots. Not loud, not angry, but patient. By 1 a.m., Carmen had given up on the thought of sleeping. She made herself a cup of tea and sat in the living room. That's when she noticed that the owl's sounds changed. It began to repeat the call. Carmen's hands trembled. She remembered her grandmother saying that when the Chaure repeated itself, the warning had already been ignored. Minutes passed, then another, closer, insistent. It was now nearly 2 in the morning. Luis and Alejandra had also given up on sleeping. The owl was keeping all 3 of them awake. They sat together on the couch, the curtains drawn tight now, though the children swore they could still feel the eyes through the glass. "Abuela?" Alejandra asked. "You said a Chaure comes before something bad. What kind of bad thing?" Carmen opened her mouth to answer, and the world exploded. A thunderclap ripped through the night, shaking the building so hard the walls screamed. The children were thrown forward as a deep orange light bloomed across the sky. Then came the sound. Jets. Low, fast, many of them. Another explosion. Closer this time. Then another. Carmen ran to the window and tore the curtain aside. A fireball burned above the city. Smoke rose in thick columns. The night pulsed with light, each flash closer than the last. The explosion came like the tearing of the sky. Carmen knew then what the Chaure had been warning them about. The Chaure screeched, not at them, but into the night, as if announcing what had already begun. It flew from tree to tree. When it returned, it was no longer at the window. It was below them. Carmen crossed herself once. "Ahora," she said. She did not look for the owl again. In Sucre, you never waited for a second sign. She grabbed the children, one under each arm, and ran. The stairwell shook as they descended. Dust fell from the ceiling. Somewhere above them, glass shattered. Another explosion hit, so close now she felt it in her teeth. The children screamed. Luis slipped as he ran down the stairs. Carmen fell with him, skin scraping against concrete. She prayed aloud as she dragged them back to their feet. "Padre nuestro, que estás en el cielo." The building groaned. They burst out the front door, and behind them, the apartment collapsed. Concrete folded on itself like wet paper. The room where they had been standing seconds earlier vanished into dust and fire. They ran across the street, coughing, crying, alive. When the noise finally softened, Carmen turned back. Across the street, the Chaure watched. Carmen did not speak. She only nodded once and held her grandchildren tighter. The owl turned away and flew to the south. It had already done what it came to do. Above it, bomber planes roared across the sky, dark shapes against the burning clouds. Carmen held her grandchildren close. She knew the Chaure was not finished. It was going to warn as many as it could, and this was only the beginning of a long, terrible night. Welcome back, Wolf friends. Thank you so much for listening to that episode. So it may be pretty apparent where we got inspiration for this story, and this is inspired by the events that happened recently with the abduction of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. We wanted to use this story to speak to how often citizens of a government become collateral with what they're doing, right? Again, as I mentioned earlier, I know that many of you come here for entertainment, for relief, so I'm only going to nod to this. It was all over the news. It's still ongoing, right? Whatever you may think, whatever information may have been shown to you online, I'm going to encourage you all to make your own opinions about that. I have my own opinions on it. All I will say is that anytime the US gets involved in a foreign country's governmental affairs, it doesn't always end well for them. I feel like that's a common thing. So I will just leave that there. We figured that this would be an interesting way to fold in current events into this story, because this creature, El Chaure, does actually come out of Venezuela. And the first source that I want to go into for this is from, I believe it's pronounced, okay, so this first source is, I believe it's pronounced opinanteliterario.wordpress.com. It's the literary commentator, and this is translated from Spanish to English. Once again, all direct sources will be linked in the Google Docs, but opinanliterario.wordpress.com. Legends about the Chaure is what this entry is called on this blog. And this gives a really good overview about what the Chaure is. And this is going to be very familiar to, again, stories that we've done in the past. I'm not sure what it is with Latine people and birds, why we have this like fear or beef with them. I have some theories about why that fear exists, or why there are those negative connotations to birds, but we'll go into that a bit in a while. So this says the Chaure, or the great horned owl, that's the kind of owl it is a medium-sized bird with white plumage that inhabits the northeastern region of Venezuela, specifically the coastal area of the states of Anzoátegui, Sucre, and Nueva Esparta. It is a nocturnal owl with white plumage and large wings. Stories and anecdotes about this nocturnal bird among the inhabitants of this region of the country indicate that it is a bird of ill omen, always bringing sorrow or warnings. And so I think this is very similar to, I think most iconically, at least with Susto de Lechuza, I feel like the Lechuza is a very common spooky bird story where people believe that witches can transform into owls, or there was a specific witch that could transform into an owl, and that seeing the lechuza is a bad omen. Even hearing the lechuza screech is a bad omen. It's a sign that something bad is going to happen. I feel like this is a tiny bit different, and we'll get into it because this continues. According to the Margarita Island chronicler Jose Joaquin Salazar Franco, or I guess aka Cheguaco, in his book Por los Senderos de Margarita from 2004, he recounts an anecdote in which this bird is the very embodiment of the devil, stealing farm animals and frightening families with its stealthy flight and terrifying call. According to those who have seen it, the Chaure can foretell both life and death. So that's that different part. It can foretell life and death. If it flies near a house and calls 3 times in succession above it, it indicates the death of a family member. However, if its call is heard in the early morning, it means that a young woman in the household has become pregnant. So again, if you hear the Chaure at night, it means death. If you hear it in the early morning hours, it means that there is a pregnancy in the household. There are also some assertions about the omens of plagues and droughts that this bird brings, in addition to its connection with bad luck and the personification of the devil. So essentially, this bird, the Chaure, is a harbinger. It's a harbinger of bad things to happen. Primarily death, but also bad luck. But also it could be a harbinger for pregnancy. So it has that one maybe positive, depending on how you look at it, that one positive side. It could be an announcement, gender reveal by Chaure, right? And we're going to talk a bit more about that idea of a harbinger. This says possible real events that led to the origin of the legend of El Chaure. This continues, as can be seen in the stories and comments that are repeated among the inhabitants of eastern Venezuela, specifically in the states of Nueva Esparta and Anzoátegui. The presence of the Chaure in the unfortunate circumstances suffered by many families and populations in the mid-19th and early 20th centuries helped to enrich the reasons to, quote, attribute to them the vicissitudes and situations that occurred. I had to look up this word, vicissitudes. It's a great word, but it essentially means like bad things, bad luck. It is important, though, this is an interesting part where we're going to make another connection, to remember that at the time, the mortality rate was high from diseases that are now curable. An infection or viral illness could be dangerous without proper treatment, and the local superstitions combined with the nocturnal habits of a bird, or the chaure, that was feared for its appearance as it flew in the dark night sky. Likewise, the excuses attributed to this bird spread due to the circumstances surrounding and still existing in some communities and the aforementioned states. A hidden pregnancy or an illness not treated in time are just one aspect that links the belief to the chaure. So a few things to cover here. The first one I wanted to talk about is this idea that this story may have been sensationalized or come out of really the mid 19th and early 20th centuries, that it says at this time the mortality rate was high from diseases that are now curable, right? This makes me think of the story of the Tlahuelpuchi, which we've heard time and time again. If you've gone to any of my live events, it's a story that I've told pretty commonly. I might have to retire that one from live events, but it's such a good story because of this. You know, it applies to so many things. But anyway, just to give a really quick recap, and if you haven't listened to those episodes, the Lechuza and the Tlahuelpuchi, I'll link those in the description, and also you can go look those up. But the Tlahuelpuchi is a turkey vulture bird-like creature. Again, birds, right? And it is said that it's kind of like a werewolf situation. So a person is born a Tlahuelpuchi and they will transform when they need to feed. So it's similar in that like human animal transformation aspect, right? But the Tlahuelpuchi transforms when they need to feed, and they feed on blood. So there's a vampiric element as well. However, it is said that the Tlahuelpuchi has a taste, a specific preference for infant blood. And this story was really popular because there's a book that I have, which is called Bloodsucking Witchcraft, and it was an epistemological study of, what was it called? Supernatural... Shoot. I'll put a picture of the book here, and I'll link it in the description too. But essentially, this is a real book. It's an academic book. It's a big study of these anthropologists or sociologists. I'm not exactly sure how they identified their study, but they were studying these people in a rural area of Tlaxcala, Mexico. And this was like early 60s, I think. And there was a sudden onset of sudden infant deaths overnight. There was 7 infant deaths, and the community responded by saying that it was the Tlahuelpuchi epidemic. It was a Tlahuelpuchi attack, that this bird-like creature attacked their community. And so they were processing their grief and their trauma and this really terrible event that happened to this small community in one night by saying that it was the Tlahuelpuchi that did this. So ultimately, spoiler alert, they discovered that many of the deaths of the infants, because of the sleeping arrangements and habits of these communities, they would swaddle the infant. And the legend is that it happens in the colder months. So they would swaddle the infants and they would sleep in the bed with the parents. That the infants, unfortunately, actually passed away from asphyxiation. They were essentially smothered, seemingly completely accidental, right? Which we know now, compared to the early 60s, that typically you don't swaddle an infant alone in a crib, or, you know, like things are different now. People know different now. And so it reminded me of this because, like it said here, at this time where many families were reporting the chaure or a chaure attacks, or that they saw a chaure before something bad happened. This is just a bird, right? Ultimately, from a skeptic's point of view, this is a bird that exists in this region of the world. So you're going to see it, and people would see it and something bad would happen. Someone would die. But this was also in a time when the mortality rate was really high because there were diseases that are now curable that weren't then. So that's why that connection was there for me, that I thought was really interesting. Something else I wanted to talk about was this idea of like harbingers of death or of bad news or bad omens. So I think maybe the most popular one is Mothman, right? We know that the Mothman is, and from this Wikipedia entry, it says in American folklore, Mothman is the name given to a humanoid creature that was reportedly seen around Point Pleasant, West Virginia from November 15th, 1966, interesting times, to December 15th, 1967. Despite its name, the original sightings of the creature prescribed avian features. Birds, again, birds. The first newspaper report was published in the Point Pleasant Register dated November 16, 1966, titled Couple Sees Man-Sized Bird, Creature something. This continues the harbinger part. The creature was introduced to a wider audience by Gray Barker in 1970 and was later popularized by John Keel in his 1975 book, The Mothman Prophecies, claiming that there were paranormal events related to the sightings and a connection to the collapse of the Silver Bridge. The book was later adapted into a 2002 film starring Richard Gere, and an annual festival in Point Pleasant is devoted to the Mothman legend. So that was kind of two sources in one, including that Mothman entry. Moving on to the next one. This is from a Curacavidigital.cl, and this is an entry called Halloween Night Birds in the Dark Mythology of Latin America, a compilation of myths and legends. So this is a list of a bunch of spooky birds, right? I'm going to go through this. I will say this was very surprising to me. This is from 2024. The lechuza was not on this list, nor was the tlahuelpuchi, which was, I was like, what the heck, why aren't they on here? But also it was really cool because I was like, oh wow, they're on so many other lists, and I'm always like, show me something else I haven't seen. So this is really cool. The first one on here is the turkey of death. And this says, literature tells us that in many towns in Venezuela, as well as much of Colombia, people are terrified to hear the call of the Brazilian guan, considered a bad omen. It was said that a witch could transform into this bird to avoid detection, or that hearing the guan meant death was near or something bad was about to happen. Its call is not heard all the time, and therein lies the mystery, because you will very rarely hear this bird sing. And this was translated from English to Spanish. So that one, it's actually called La Pavita de la Muerte, or Pavita, but this is showing me a picture of an owl. So I'm not sure. It could just be an owl, but they call it the pavita, which translated for some reason to turkey. Again, all about owls. The next one is the chaure, which is what we just spoke about. And then it goes on to the ave bruja, or pájaro fantasma, so the witch bird or the ghost bird. And I think this is from Urutau. This says the Urutau, also known as Ayaymama, Serenera, Guajojo, Cacuy, and Putu, and Vieja del Monte, among others, is a species of bird of the Nyctidae. Again, not a bird doctor. Family. It's a specific kind of species of bird or family of bird that is found in Central and South America, from the southeastern region of Mexico to the north and northeast of Argentina and to the south of Paraguay. It is informally known in several countries of the region as the ghost bird, or again, the pájaro fantasma, because it hides great and diverse stories behind it. In Peru, a legend tells of a terrible epidemic that was decimating the people of a native community. A mother of two, feeling the first symptoms of the illness, wanted to save her children from the disease, so she took them to a distant mountain and left them there. Nearby was a beautiful stream abundant with fish and fruit trees. With great sorrow she left them, knowing she would never see them again. They played, ate fruit, and bathed in the stream, but as night fell, they missed their mother and set out to find her. However, they became lost in the mountains. Frightened and weeping with sorrow, they begged to the birds so they could fly to their mother. Then the spirit of the jungle took pity on them and transformed them into birds, and they flew away. But when they reached their village, they found it deserted. Everyone had died. Since then, the legend says they never stopped flying, and when they perch atop a tree, weary from searching for their mother, they let out their mournful cry, "Ay ay mama, ay ay mama." So this is like a reverse Llorona story with a lechuza influence from Peru. Wow, that is so okay, here's the thing is we may end up doing or dedicating a full episode to some of these, because this one is a great story and I would love to expand on that. Jeff, start whipping it up. We're doing a bird series. We're going bird watching. I need to find a way to group these episodes, categorize them, and I'm going to put bird watching as one of the categories so that you can search it somewhere. The next one here is the Cuclio Crespin, I believe it's pronounced, or the crested cuckoo. It says the crested cuckoo, also known as the striped cuckoo, is a species of cuckoo bird belonging to the, if I say cuckoo one more time, belonging to the, here it is, Cuculidae family, and the only member of the genus Tapera. It is native to Central and South America and inhabits areas from southeastern Mexico to Argentina and Brazil. The legend of the Crespin is widespread in rural Argentina and other parts of Latin America, but it is a story told and recounted especially in the province of Chaco. It is one of the most captivating legends of that province and has also served as a source of inspiration for many local artists who have composed songs in honor of this bird and the urban legend. Legend has it that Crespin was a kind and hardworking man. His life was peaceful, but he had a wife named Durmisa who loved parties, music, and especially dancing. Girl same. Whenever she heard about a party, she would attend and dance until dawn. Girl same. Actually, no, I'm getting too old for that. One year, with a bountiful harvest, Crespin had to work from sunrise sunrise to sunset to finish the reaping and threshing. The day seemed endless to him, but he had to finish his work as quickly as possible. One afternoon, he arrived at his ranch exhausted and sick from the exertion of his labor, and Durmisa paid him no attention. She was busy dancing. Crespin was still recovering and asked his wife to go to town to get some medicine so he could feel better and finish working the harvest the next day. Durmisa went, but on the way, she saw a party going on and couldn't resist joining in, dancing among the crowd as soon as she heard a samba playing. Durmisa, girl, help your man. He's sick. Between dances and more dances, Durmisa forgot about her sick husband. When the grand party ended at dawn, Durmisa returned home and couldn't find Crespin. She searched desperately, calling out, Crespin, Crespin. But her husband didn't answer. He wasn't there. Not content with searching only at home, she set off for the wheat fields. Overcome with remorse, breathless, she continued calling for her husband, her voice fading. She begged God to give her wings to aid her search, unaware that Crespin had already died and that some kind of neighbors had held a wake and buried him. How long was she dancing for? That is why the Chaco legend tells that Durmisa grew wings and became a solitary bird, still searching for her mate, her song echoing, Crespin, Crespin. Durmisa, girl, this is interesting, this connection of the story with the kids and this story of how they were in a moment of desperation, they begged God for wings to search for their loved one. So this idea of asking God, give me wings to do this thing faster. And God said, sure, why not? This last one is El ave de los ojos de fuego, or the bird with the eyes of fire. This says the diucon, also known as mandao, urco, huilco, hashpul, Budco and Wutco, is a bird of the order of passerines, which inhabits Chile and southwest Argentina. The ducion is known as the bird with fiery eyes because of the reddish tint of its eyes. In Chiloé mythology, the literature indicates the duison is said to be an estimary of sorcerers, as it can often be seen near the window of homes, as if spying on the inhabitants. In fact, its mythical name is El Mandao, which refers to its following the orders of the sorcerers. Interesting. Actually, this would make a cool tattoo, like a tattoo of this bird with red eyes, striking red eyes. So it's like a familiar. It says, legend has it that long ago, a young woman, her daughter, and her husband lived happily until one day a red-eyed bird began pecking at their window day after day. The family grew increasingly worried as the bird seemed determined to stay. Suddenly, the young woman's husband began to feel ill, sick, and very tired. Without knowing what was wrong, they consulted many doctors, but none could improve the young husband's condition. The bird cried day and night until one day it simply stopped pecking at the window and disappeared. The young woman felt a great sense of relief, but this absence did not last long, as one afternoon the bird reappeared and began pecking at the window. Frightened, she called her husband, but he did not answer. She became very worried, but to her surprise, she found him lying on the floor and lifeless. From that day on, everyone fears that red-eyed bird, for they say that this bird brings many misfortunes and tragedies. Furthermore, for the Yagan people, the Duision is a shaman who must be treated with respect, since if attacked, he can use his great power to cause great storms. Interesting. Many dualities to this one bird. Honestly, it's kind of a cute bird. It looks like it's a small bird. It has these like striking fiery ruby eyes. But it goes from being an emissary, which let me check the definition of that so I can be sure. I would assume that means kind of like a familiar, right? A person sent on special mission. Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of like an emissary again, or it's the mandao. And then it goes from being that to being a harbinger on its own. And then according to the Yagan people, it's its own kind of like autonomous powerful creature, right? And the Yagan people are a group of indigenous peoples in the southern cone of South America. Their traditional territory includes the islands south of Isla Grande and the Tierra del Fuego, extending their presence into Cape Horn, making them the world's southernmost indigenous human population. Just a quick fact about them. Interesting. Wow, what a great list again. And this was by Tamara Nunez. Thank you, Tamara, for writing this. And again, there was more on this that I did not read. I didn't read every single thing here, but this is the gurakavidigital.cl, and the entry is Birds in the Dark Mythology of Latin America. Thank you, Tamara, because this is great inspiration for further episodes. Y'all let us know in the comments of this episode on the social media post or wherever, which one of these, or which ones, or all of them maybe, should we cover on Susto. The next source that we have is from Caracas Chronicles, and this is Ghoul Nation Part 1. It seems like it's a series from this publication, Monsters of Eastern Venezuela, and this is like a list of them. Again, really great kind of inspiration for future episodes. I think Jeff is just setting us up for success. So it starts with, of course, El Chaure, which we've already got a good solid grasp of on here. There's one here called the Seven-Headed Serpent from Bolivar, and it says, legend has it that beneath the middle stone in the Orinoco River dwells a seven-headed serpent, each head lying under places surrounding the historic center. It is said that if the serpent were to move all its seven heads, the city would sink into the river. Already in the early 20th century, there were myths of shipwrecks and people going missing around the stone due to the serpent, because the monster dragged into the depths anything that came near the place. It was last spotted in 1985 by several inhabitants of the port who saw it stir the waters and cause large waves across the river. This seems like a deity level kind of creature, right? Like it has the power to sink a whole city. Interesting. The next one is Los Canaimas from Amazonas. It says Pemon, I believe. Pemon, P-E-M-O-N, children don't go out after sundown. Their mothers call for them and scold them if they see them playing so late. More so if they're near a river or at the fringes of a swamp where Canaimas crawl. These amphibious creatures with enormous eyes and deft, webbed hands hunt in packs, with shrill whistles to single out the prey for their peers. They drag everything they catch into the water and devour it without even disturbing the surface. Canaimas. Man, I didn't know Venezuela. Well, I mean, there's many places that we don't know about this really rich folklore that exists there. This next one is Los Chinamitos, and it says, small shadowed children who dwell in beaches and open fields. They confound people, steal their valuables, and scare kids by projecting their silhouettes in the light of flashlights, cell phones, or candles. Their playful laughter is a hollow echo in coastal nights, and their empty eyes watch travelers from the trees. They always appear in groups, and some inhabit abandoned houses. Again, ghost children. I think scarier than any kind of other ghost. The next one is El Carey, a monstrous turtle that sinks boats. Dragging them far from the coast, it initially appears beautiful and beckoning, making fishers go wild about catching it. It shows itself early in the morning when the first boat set out to fish. Also early in the morning is pop quiz. When you hear the Chaure in the morning, what does that mean? Pregnant. When the fishermen already have it in their boat and gloat over the capture, they realize that the lower part of the armored carapace shows the relief of a human face, as if a man's head had been trapped within it. Some say they've heard a voice trying to speak from within. Others say they've only heard unintelligible whispers. When the horrified fishermen throw the creature back into the water, they see how it grows from within the depths of the sea and starts to attack the boat until it's reduced to splinters. Other legends say that anyone who kills a carey becomes one himself. Interesting. That is similar to the Tlaulpuchi, right? The legend for the Tlaulpuchi is that if somebody kills one, they become one themselves. And the carapace, or the word that I used there about the turtle, that's what I figured it was, but I looked it up. It is the hard upper shell of a turtle. So it's saying that they see a man's face in the shell of the turtle. That's interesting. The next one, and we're almost done with this list, is the ghost herd. It says, no, we're not talking about the one of the government is supposedly raising in the fields to provide the country with milk and meat. We're talking about the devil's herd grazing near El Tigre, causing delays for vehicles or making them lose their way, and cows crossing the field without mooing or rumbling. Like a spectral procession, people have also spotted horses or mules blocking the roads, making drivers lose control and then realize with a glance back that there was nothing there. They can be picked out from normal cows or horses by looking them in the eyes because these apparitions are blind. A pale and pasty film covers their eyes with pus and crust. Ew. Still, they move as if they've always known where to go, or as if an invisible something or someone was shepherding them. So these are ghost animals, right? Ghost herd, but it seems it could be a herd of anything, whether it's cows, horses, mules, donkeys. What about ducks? No, that makes me sad to think of ghost ducks. But it's a herd that basically just causes obstruction on the roads. And this last one here is the Mapinguari. This says, we share this monster with Brazil. Venezuela shares it with Brazil. A huge, heavy, and furry beast spotted in the depths of the jungle. Cryptozoology says that perhaps we're in the presence of a megatherium, or a giant ground sloth that has survived extinction. Natives respect and worship them. They allow no one to hunt them or do them harm. Wow, so this is more on the cryptid end here. Well, I guess a lot of these were cryptids, right? But still, this one is saying that it's even, again, also recognized by indigenous peoples. Ghoul friends, thank you again one more time for listening to today's episode. Once more, please visit the resources in the episode description. You can support Susto by leaving a positive rating and a review wherever you're listening. Reviews like this one from La 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 ZX. I'm just going to call you Lala. I'm not sure if I've read this one. You guys, if I repeat these reviews, please let me know. I've just figured out a way to track them so I don't repeat them. But up until now, give me a heads up. Either way, if I haven't read it, Lala said, I absolutamente love this podcast. Lala, me too. I really appreciate it. I came across this podcast because I was searching for Santa Muerte's stories as a devotee and wanted to see how many people actually talk about her. And that episode will be linked below. Lala continues, which Ayden did a great job. And after that, thank you, Lala, so much. I've been hooked, Lala says. Even better, he's from Texas, and I wanted to support a local ghoul bay. What's up, ghoul friend? Thank you so much for everything you do. Would love to have you on my own podcast too. Lala, reach out, send me a DM, an email. Again, thank you for that review. You can also support Susto and thin the veil a bit to get access to bonus content for $3 or more a month by visiting patreon.com/SustoPodcast. You could be listening to this episode early and ad-free, or you could even be watching this episode as a video. I'm looking at you right now in your eyes. A colossal thank you to this episode's patron saints. You are Liza, Rachel, Alejandra, Luther, April, D, Josette, Sam, Mandy, Lori, Jeannie, Desiree C, Ashes, Neressa, Rachel A, Azucena, Marlene, Chata, Lainey, Desiree A, Ricardo, Vanessa, Maritza, Nieves, Manormal, Iris, Mar, Flor, Selena, Nightingale, Clint, Rachel W, and Armani. Thank you all so much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you one more time. Please make sure that you are following me online for any and all updates. That's at Susto Podcast on every platform. And until next time, take care of each other and no te asustes. Bye.